Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me on my talk about designing drone chi, unpacking the thinking and making of somaesthetic human-drone interaction. Drone chi was designed to facilitate exploration of movement and reflection on that movement. It's primarily achieved by making the drone respond to small changes in the way you move, breathe, and balance yourself. So to start off, let's move through the drone chi experience together. You begin by taking a flower from a vine. Then you put the hand pads on, one for each hand, and your hands slightly curve around each hand pad. Once the drone is in the air, you are instructed to move your hands around and explore what makes the light bright. Then the drone starts moving in a circle, and you begin to maintain the brightness of that light by following it with your hands. Eventually, the control switches over to you, and you can lead the drone anywhere around the room. This requires coordination and slow movement. The design of drone chi mainly rests on two design principles. The first is Soma Design, which is motivated by improving one's quality of life through cultivating an appreciation for sensory experiences. Basically, if you can develop your ability to reflect on what you are feeling, you are better able to appreciate and create your lived experience. A typical example is mediated body, which uses the act of touching another person to modulate an electronic sound, and that brings attentions to the sensations of touching that person. It's a platform to explore moving with another person, and it often has a facilitator to guide the user through the experience to create a playful and dynamic aesthetic. Product design engineering is the other design discipline that's heavily lent on in the design of drone chi, and it is the industrial design and manufacturing engineering of consumer products. It is motivated by user-centeredness, manufacturability, and cost. There are no facilitators in the final product, so in the design of this office chair, for example, the levers and knobs need to be intuitive. The design process would be familiar to most designers. Product design engineers use mood boards, sketching, and prototypes in an attempt to meet user requirements within engineering limitations. So we've got Soma Design and Product Design Engineering. Soma Design is slow, meandering, and the end result is often facilitated, whereas Product Design is quick, direct, and the end results often are unaccompanied. This talk is about how the line is blurred between them in the design process. You will see how they combine to help us work within the narrow technical limitations that come with working with really small drones, and turn them into opportunities for an aesthetic experience, for example in the design of the shape of the drone. You also see how they combined to deliver something that emulates aspects of Tai Chi but maintained an intuitiveness in use, for example in the design of the flight path of the drone that the drone takes when you follow the drone with your hands. So if you look at the raw materials of drone chi, there are some challenges. We've got the blades, they're spinning very fast and are kind of threatening. They carry negative preconceptions, and not the kind of materials that you want to start with for a somaesthetic interaction. On a technical side, they can't carry much weight, and the markers have to be arranged in a particular way for the motion capture system to recognize them. But what the motion capture system does offer is that direct manipulation of the drone. So when you first move with them, you immediately recognize their potential as a somaesthetic experience. Your movements are intimately tied to the drone. There was definitely something meditative about it, and that needed to be cultivated. So I took Tai Chi classes. And there were three aspects that I wanted to come through in the final experience from my Tai Chi classes. They were coordination of the limbs, slow movement, and imagery. So what I mean by imagery is that I was often imagining myself doing something else, being something else, or being someplace else whilst I was in my Tai Chi classes. And this imagery also helped us in the design process. An emblematic movement of these aspects of Tai Chi is cloud hands, where the hands move left and right, as you see, and the fingers are kind of trailing and gently brushing against the cloud, so to speak, which is what you kind of see it's what you kind of imagine when you do the movement. So we drew from this image and created a basic prototype that just kind of flew around the person. We also made this kind of quick, fluffy mock-up and did some informal testing at a couple of conferences. At this point, we drew from product design engineering and wrote a product design specification. This is kind of like a return brief, a list of things the product has to do to meet the brief, with the added layer of the aesthetic considerations that are taken from Tai Chi, the coordination, the slow movement, the imagery. So boxing these amorphous, subjective, first-person experiences and putting them into a specification list seems counterintuitive, but it worked well for us. We used kind of open-ended language and referred to it often in the design process. So moving forward, we started to explore form and texture, and now you see more familiar processes from product design engineering. For example, here on the bottom, can we change the profile of the drone to a jellyfish with super light foam? But in doing so, we came across this problem where in the jellyfish frame, there was this weak point, and in order to solve it, we integrated the frame into further into the chassis. But in doing so, we kind of fell upon this idea of using the carbon as loops, and loops that look like petals. And so we landed on this flower design in trying to solve an engineering problem. But because of the prevalence of imagery in Tai Chi, we looked at the drone moving left and right when flying, and we saw a lotus flower floating on the surface of the pond. So we drew upon that idea to fill out the design of not just the drone but also the hand pads. So when it came to mapping the drone to the body, we also drew from the imagery of Tai Chi to generate ideas. This is one example inspired by a movement called holding the ball, and we use the first-person experience of doing this movement in class and compare it to moving it with a drone and make changes to the mapping accordingly. Again, this is covered more in depth in the paper. As we develop the mapping to the body to emulate the feel of Tai Chi, at this point, the role of following the drone started to become more clear. In developing the role of following the drone, we had a more user-centered focus, with the intention of following the drone as acting more of an onboarding or intro for new users. So these are some of the flight paths that the drone followed before the participants would lead the drone themselves, and we'll just spend a bit of time explaining the last two. This third iteration you see there is when people started following the drone in a horizontal circle, and they kind of just walked back and forth aimlessly around the room. But we wanted more slow and repetitive, unfamiliar movements to introduce them to this experience without, of course, explicitly telling them. So we moved the spiral to a vertical plane, as you see on the very right-hand side. And this had a great effect as it engaged the quads, shifted the weight. It was much closer to the kind of movements you would feel in Tai Chi, and more importantly at this stage was something that the users could immediately understand without instruction. So I hope I have shown how these two design processes have successfully intertwined with each other. As you can see on this timeline, there are more examples of this in the paper, so please check that out. To finish, I'll leave you with a set of questions I was constantly asking myself during the design process. And they were, how can I share this experience with someone else through the drone? What are the essential sensory elements to the experience? How can I introduce these to a user? And how can I reliably engineer a system to deliver these interactions? Thank you.